Hi, Javier.
Hi. How are you? You hear me?
Here, yep.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Hi Dan. How are you?
Thank you.
Good. Good. Thanks for helping me with this
Well,
interview for the thesis. And okay, I will talk about the topic. That is
okay.
so you to know. You already know about it, but okay, the about the modification in pedestrian behavior in public spaces through gamified or playful interactions in hybrid digital physical experiences or spaces
Okay.
like interactive spaces.
Right.
So yeah, my master is in media spaces in interactive installations. So this is why I chose this
Sure.
topic, and I think well you and your project in the crowd control seem
Yeah.
to be really suitable to this
Yeah.
to my topic. So thanks for your help.
Yeah.
And should we start with questions?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So the first one for the first topic is about the behavior in public space, and the question is, how does the design of a public space affect the behavior of the people? How do you choose these spaces when you have a project or when you did or I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that's really two questions. One of them, it's two questions I think you're asking. One of them is how does the design of a public space affect people's behavior? And the other one, I guess, is how did we choose this particular space in New Orleans where we used the video game for the jaywalking. Is that right?
Uh, yes, yes. Well, actually, this is more like of general,
Oh,
not
okay,
not
got it.
not
Okay,
not
okay,
not
got it.
just
Okay,
in one
that's why
specific.
I want to ask.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, the design of a public space affects people's behavior in many ways. I mean, at some level, it sets the boundaries, it sets the rules, it sets the norms for how people will behave. And I think that these spaces have a much greater effect on our behavior than most of us realize. So I think the answer to that first part is it's hugely important. In the answer to the second part, which is, how do you choose the right space to try and experiment, I guess, is I don't know. I mean, I think what you have to do is you have to, I guess it's, you look for something where you can, in my view, you can do something quickly and see if it works. That is, you should spend. I think people spend too much time planning and not enough time just trying to put something into place and seeing how it goes. So what I would look for is a particular site. Um, is it relatively easy to do it in this site, and then go from there.
Okay, so
That,
it depends on what you are trying to find out mostly.
yeah. But it also depends on, at some level, in making it easy for yourself. So, so don't try to pick the most challenging public space. Pick this public space where you think you can put in place a test and quickly find out how it works.
Okay, okay, perfect. Okay, thank you. So the second question is about the difference between game and play. How do you define the terms game and play or playfulness? Do you
Yeah.
consider them to different terms, or do you think they have like a relationship between them?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot written on this, as you probably know.
Yes.
I consider them different, related but different. Maybe a little bit, like like this, sort of like a,
Yeah,
an
sort of
over,
a
maybe a little bit bigger overlap. But yeah, so for me, games, games are, um, games have an end. They have an end. They have an outcome. Let's say they have a score, they have explicit rules. To me, those are the three criteria, the three main components of the game. That is, they have a score, they have rules, and they have an outcome. Whereas I think play can have those things sometimes, but doesn't have to have those things. So play is often there's some rules, but the rules tend to be invisible rules rather than visible rules. There isn't an end necessarily, and there isn't an outcome. That is, like if kids are playing out, if kids are playing outside. I'm trying to think of something. Kids are playing outside, running around. On a swing set, like swinging on a playground, okay? There is no end. You don't have a winner in the swinging. There isn't an end like in a football match where it's like, okay, we got 90 minutes, and when the 90 minutes are over, the game is over. So I think that's the difference. That one has rules and an outcome, the other does not. But there is some overlap. Have you seen? Can I text you on this?
Yes.
I mean, will this work?
I think you can.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, I see. So, have you heard? I'm going to text you this name. Have you heard of this writer that I just texted you, James Carse?
You texted something? I didn't.
Yeah. You didn't see it?
No.
Okay, hold on. Wait there. Hang on a second, Javier. Sorry. That didn't work. Okay, here we go. I'm going to try it again.
There.
You got that, right?
Yeah.
Do you know this name?
No, I haven't read.
Okay, so you should look. He wrote a book called with this title. That is exactly about this topic, about the difference between play and games. I don't know. I mean, your English is so good. You could read it in English. I don't know whether it's translated into Spanish or not. I assume you're writing your thesis in Spanish, right?
No, it's in English.
Oh, it's in English. Oh, okay, great, cool. Okay, so check out this book. It's exactly it goes exactly to your question. That second question.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah. I will check it out and to see what's what's there. And okay, regarding to this, do you think it's important while doing or designing or thinking about what you're gonna do in the experiment to see if you're gonna use game or play or like?
I mean, I think knowing the difference is important. I mean, again, my own view is I think there's some situations where games would work. There's some situations where play would work, and you just need to test it and see. That is, I could make a prediction, but who cares about my prediction? Let's test it and see what's right. That's how I look at it. So. I mean, I think that, like, for instance, that crowd control thing that we did where we were trying to prevent jaywalking, and there was the game. I think that a game works in that setting only because there is a very explicit rule in place. You have to stay within the crosswalk, and there's also time. There's there's a certain amount of time, like there would be in a basketball match or a football match or something like that. So I think that in those kinds of conditions, games probably work best. In other kinds of conditions, play works best. But again, that's just a hypothesis. You got to go out and test it.
Okay, cool. Perfect, thanks. So the third question would be, which type of experience gamified or playful has more potential to be... Okay, no, that wasn't the one. Well, in what part of the process of the project you decide this? Like in the initial, or you just go test one, or like you don't think, or like.
No, I mean, I think it's similar to I think what you have to do is you have to think about the setting and you have to make a prediction like, is this a setting where a game is going to work, or is this a setting where play is going to work? And I think that for something like a crosswalk, as I said, that has very explicit rules and that has a time component, I think games would work. I think games would work very well. For other kinds of things, other kinds of things that are less, I'm not sure, other kinds of things that are less constrained,
Okay.
I think play could work. I think play could work pretty well too. But again, I really think it goes down. A lot of it goes, if you
To the conditions of the of what you want to try out.
exactly. It's the conditions. It's partly the conditions of what kind of behavior do you want to try to create. What kind of behavior do you want to try to create, and then what? And so, if that is that behavior based on rules? Does that behavior have a component of time to it? Is that behavior long term or short term? And I think you could go through those, look at the qualities of the behavior you want to create, and then make a good prediction about whether you want to go for a game or whether you want to go for something more play oriented.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Okay, so now we change to the digital physical interaction.
Okay?
It's which digital interactions are more likely to succeed in changing human behavior in your projects? For example, like smartphone, the touch display screens, consoles, virtual reality, augmented reality, digital products. Like, what type of digital interaction have you used more, or like you think it has more? This is more about like the the actual. Not product, but like yeah, the physical part of the project, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not sure. I think it again depends. It depends on the. It depends on all the factors. Like if you think about if you think about this, what you have is you have a whole set of factors here. Okay, so you have the situation. All right, you have the desired behavior. Okay, um, you have the people the people you're targeting, and then you have um, your own resources. So if you look at this, I think those are like some of the key variables there. So I think you need to look at these and say, okay, which of these situations, which of these is going to be appropriate for digital and which is going to be appropriate for not digital. So my guess is that if you have, I mean, the good thing about the digital stuff is that if you have limited resources, it's cheaper and easier to do. If you have older people, you probably don't want to do digital, but if you have younger people, you probably do. I think a lot of it depends on the behavior that you want. I think that's more complicated, and a lot of it depends on the situation. Is it a situation where people are going to have their smartphones out and accessible? When they're driving, you don't want to rely on a digital solution, obviously. When they're walking, maybe you do want to, So I think you got to look at all of those variables. But I think there's a way to go at this very systematically. I think you can probably come up with. I mean, this is a very simplistic list of the variables, but
okay.
you could probably really think through what are the variables here, and based on each variable, what does it suggest? What does it suggest about our direction that we pursue?
Okay, so more digital now.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. For the other, can you talk about a playful experience in a public space that you have developed? Like the one that I talk about in the thesis is the staircase.
Yeah.
The beatbox. How was the process of doing it, or the idea, or how did you implement it? Like, talk about that project.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. That's a good. You're right. That's a very good example of a play versus game. That's a good example of that. So, there was a project like it in Sweden that we saw, and then we tried to do it and we picked that location in New York just because we got the permits to do it. I mean, that was, like some places wouldn't let us do it. So we got the permits to do it there, and it was a fairly busy area, and it was a perfect setting in that there was an escalator right next to it. So you could see when are people using the stairs and when are they using the escalator. So that's how we picked the location. In terms of design, I think that one of the elements of the design was to make it. I think there were a couple of things. One, as you say, was to make it playful. I think that's a really important part of the design. The other thing was to make it um, surprising. So make it look like something no one had seen before. So it was a surprise. So people would walk by and they would say, "What? What is that?" So a sense of curiosity and surprise. Um, the other thing about that worked is that everybody's experience on that was different. So people could customize the experience. So some people would go up and down and up and down and just play around with it. Other people would just go straight up. Other people would, so everybody's experience was a little bit different on it.
Okay.
So I think that's a big part of what it was. So there wasn't a winner or a loser. There weren't any rules to that, like in a game. There wasn't a winner. There wasn't a loser. There weren't any rules. It was simply playful. It was surprising, and it was customizable. That is, people could make it the way they wanted to make it.
And comparing it to the one that we already talked about, gamified, that is more like the jaywalking one.
Yeah.
Uh, how, like, could you tell in which one the people get more engaged? Like, which one was more like
Yeah.
interesting for the people to play with? Or
I think that that's a really good question. I think that the stairs were more engaging. I think the stairs were more engaging. Now, why that is, I'm not sure. But I think that part of it was that it was everybody's experience was unique. Whereas the game is basically the same game over and over again. So I'm not sure how many people want to play that game twice, three times. Whereas I think people would want to go up those stairs three times, four times, five. So that's my guess.
okay, perfect. Okay, so let's continue to the next one. Throughout which type of experience you think people are more likely to? Okay, that was. uh, well, yes. Which one of the two will work more to for people to learn public behavior, well, like through playful or through gamified, like when you actually want them to teach them something, like not just for them to play or something. Actually, but when you want to teach them how to behave, which one of the two do you think would work? Like in more general.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I think it depends. I think it depends on all those variables we're talking about. I think it depends on what kind of behavior you want to teach. Um, my guess is that my guess is that the playful stuff might work slightly better than the game stuff. That is, I think that the effects of the playful things will last longer than the effects of the game. But I don't know. But I think it really depends on what kind of behavior you want. What kind of behavior you want.
Okay. Do all of your experience designs have changed human behavior? How did you find the motivation and engagement of people when they didn't, and how do you engage people in changing their behavior?
So the first question was, give me the first part of the question again.
Yeah. Do all of experiments or like have changed human behavior? Like how did you find out the motivation and engagement when you did them? Like how did you like okay, this will motivate them to do this? Like how do you?
Well, I mean, before it was just a guess, because not everything we tried worked at all. So it was really just a guess, and sometimes there were different things to test along the way. So, for instance, we did something with the safety instructions on airplanes, and found that like giving people a quiz and having a prize was not effective at all. Didn't work very well. So that's like a game. That's a game situation. Turn it into like a quiz show with a prize. That did not work very well for getting people to pay attention to the safety instructions on airplanes. But scaring them did. So
okay.
So it really, yeah. So it, again, I think that you got to go. I keep coming back to this idea. It's like they're all these variables, particularly what behavior you want, what situation you're in, and what people you're dealing with. And I think that all those work together, and depending on depending on what those things are specifically, that's going to lead to different approaches.
Okay, like motivation and engagement is also depending on these variables.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Motivation. I mean, what I was most interested in wasn't motivation and engagement. I mean, that's like an inner quality. That's like, what are people? That's like that's an affective state. Am I motivated? Am I engaged? That's about me. And that's harder to measure than, do people take the stairs versus the escalator? Do people stop jaywalking? So motivation and engagement is about an internal state. What we were measuring more than anything else was the external state. What do people do more than how do they feel? Now, once people do something, you can infer that they feel a certain way. That could be right or could be wrong. But I was really interested in what are people doing.
Okay, yeah. For example, in this part, I talked with about the one in the football players, the bubble wrap, no bubble, what it's called?
Yeah. Bubble wrap,
Yeah. So like this changed, like you were first doing it playful, and then you changed to a gamified. Like with the score and everything like this.
Exactly.
How this type of motivation like change the engagement of the people, like how did you came out to this, like how do you know what will they get more motivated to change their behavior, like how can you not tell but maybe predict or try to test that?
That's all that it is. It's just a prediction. And so it's so you don't know, you don't know what the answer is. You can predict though, and you predict again. I'm sorry to keep saying the same thing, but you can predict based on all of those variables. So whether a gamified or a play will work. Now I think you're making a very interesting point, saying you can change it along the way. You can go from game to play, maybe play to game along the way to keep people engaged. But, both play and games are engaging to people. They just engage people in slightly different ways.
Okay, and in this example, in this one of the footsteps, which one was the winning one, for example? Because like in the video that I saw, I didn't get to see the results of the of the one of the score. You know, like when you put the football players in the revolving door and the
Oh
score,
yeah.
like which one was like the. I know that when the bubble wrap thing, footsteps, the people actually didn't go through it. Like it decreased the number of people but I don't know if using the
The football was good. The football got people
yeah.
interested. Yeah, in the same way that I think the stairs work, because it was surprising. You know, what is that doing there? And I think that that worked pretty well because of the surprise and because, and to me, that was more play than game, the football player, even though it was a football player, because it wasn't a score or anything like that. It was just something playful, something surprising. So I think that the element of surprise is a big factor also. Novelty, surprise, doing something unexpected. That's hugely important in all of this.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Let's continue. Which characteristics, like the ones that we've talked about, like playful digital interactions with smartphones, engagement, and motivations, are essential while creating a concept of this type, like of human modification. Right? Which one are the characteristics that are more important while
Again, it's the same question. I mean, it really depends. It depends on again who you're dealing with, what the situation is. You know, again, as I said, I think that digital solutions might be better for younger people than for older people. Although that's just, again, that's just a guess. You got to go out and test that. I think that. I think the situation that you're in makes a huge difference too, and then also what's the behavior that you want plays a huge role as well. Particularly whether it's short term or long term, whether it has a time component to it, all those kinds of things play. You know, all of those play a role.
what is the difference like if you want to do it long term or short term, like
I think that with long term, with short term, like okay, for short term, think of it this way. Think about the game at the crosswalk. Okay, I think that the third time people encounter that, it might not work as well. It might wear off. Whereas I think with the stairs, I think the stairs will last longer because there are more options. There are more surprising things that you could do. So, for instance, with the crosswalk, I can imagine it lasting if you change the game. Okay. So 1 week it's a certain kind of game, the next week it's a different kind of game, the third week it's another kind of game. That could be really cool. I think that you have to. It's that the novelty part of it, the surprise part of it is a really important component.
So people don't get habituated, you know.
Exactly.
Habituation, yeah.
Exactly. And they're easier to they'll habituate more quickly to things that are very simple and circumscribed, like a very simple tug of war game. They're less likely to be habituated by stairs, where if you go up one way, it makes one sound. If you go up another way, it makes another sound. If you go up then down, then up then down, it makes a different kind of sound. So I think that can keep it alive a little bit longer.
Perfect. Cool. So, well, that's all about it. Like, for a conclusion, can you tell us like how important or necessary do you think this type of spaces are nowadays, or like to change human behavior? Or
I think that there's a great opportunity to change public spaces to promote better behavior. I think there's a huge opportunity there, and I think it ends up making cities and towns better places to live. I think it could even, if people behave well in one area of their life, they might behave better in other areas of their life. So I think it's a huge opportunity. I think there's just an enormous opportunity to do some really interesting things to really make life better in a very specific, practical, concrete way.
Okay, perfect, cool. Um, well, another little, how important is doing it playful or gamified? Is it like to change the behavior? You think it's like, or
I think it's
would you
both.
like?
I think you use both. I mean, I think that, again, you have,
No,
here's
no,
the thing.
either of them. Like, do you think like changing behavior it's better when it's gamified, or like, or just like trying to change behavior in other ways? It's the same. Like,
I think it depends. I mean, the way to look at it is that when you're looking at the design of public spaces, people like you who are working on these issues, you come with a toolbox. You come with a set of tools, okay, and a whole set of tools, and play and gamification are two of those tools. And just like if you're building a house, you don't use a hammer for everything. You don't use a saw for everything. It depends on what you're doing. And I think it's like they're two very, very important tools. And if you know when to use them, they're very effective tools. But it doesn't mean you use them everywhere and every time. And it doesn't mean that, it's like saying, is a hammer better than a saw? Well, it depends. If you're trying to get a nail in, a hammer's a hell of a lot better than a saw. If you're trying to split a piece of wood, a saw is better than a hammer. So that's how I look at it. So you have this toolkit you bring in. These are two extraordinarily effective tools, but again, their effectiveness depends on the situation.
perfect. And your last remarks to this interview, like your last
Yeah.
words, like.
I mean, I think Javier, there's I think it's a really interesting topic, and there aren't that many people in the world who are working on this. So I'll be really keen to see what you come up with. I think there's a huge opportunity here. I really do.
Okay,
So it'll be really interesting to see what you come up with here. Should be fascinating.
Yes, well, I'm in that stage, so like I'm conceptualizing.
Yeah, I hear you.
So let's see. I will let you know when I'm finished with the project.
Okay, cool.
Thanks a lot for the
All right,
interview.
Javier.
And
Where are you again? Are you in Madrid?
no, right now I'm Barcelona, but I'm studying the master in Berlin.
In Berlin?
In Berlin, yes.
But you're Spanish.
No, I'm Mexican.
You're Mexican.
Yes. But I
Okay.
study in
So
Berlin.
you're a Mexican studying in Berlin, but in Barcelona.
But yeah, for the moment,
Okay,
my
got it.
family lives here. But
Globalization at work, right there.
of
Got
course.
it. Okay. All right. Okay. Awesome. Thanks,
Thanks a
Javier.
lot. Have a nice day. Ciao.
Okay. Ciao.